Willkommen auf dem Twitch-Kanal des Verbands Deutscher Schriftstellerinnen und Schriftsteller, des VS in Verdi. Mein Name ist Lena Falkenhagen, ich bin die Bundesvorsitzende des Verbands Deutscher Schriftstellerinnen und Schriftsteller, bin selbst Autorin für Romane, Hörbücher und Computerspiele sowie Aktivistin für AutorInnenrechte. Ich spreche hier heute Abend im Rahmen der Woche der Meinungsfreiheit des Börsenvereins des deutschen Buchhandels mit 2 Autorinnen, die aus Ländern stammen, in denen keine bis sehr wenig Meinungsfreiheit existiert. Gestern sprachen wir auf diesem Kanal in unserer digitalen Lesereihe über die Meinungsfreiheit in Deutschland, unter anderem mit Heinrich Peukmann, dem Generalsekretär des Deutschen PEN-Zentrums. Unter den Videos auf diesem Kanal finden Sie auch das Gespräch, das mein Stellvertreter Leander Sukow, der auch Writers in Exile Beauftragter des Deutschen PEN-Zentrums ist, am Mittwoch mit Asli Erdogan und Nazli Karabikoglu über die Situation in der Türkei geführt hat. Heute haben wir 2 Stipendiatinnen des PEN bei uns zu Gast, nämlich Yirgalem Fisseha aus Eritrea und Volha Hapeyeva aus Belarus. Da gerade Yirgalem noch kein Deutsch spricht, findet diese Veranstaltung heute Abend wieder auf Englisch statt. Wir planen aber eine deutsche Untertitelspur für YouTube. Good evening and welcome, Volha and Yirgalem. Please do activate your camera and your audio. Welcome. It's so nice to see you and to have you with us here tonight. I'm very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I will quickly introduce you to our audience. Volha Hapeyeva was born in 1982 in Minsk. She is a Belarusian author of prose, lyric, theater, children's books, and a proficient translator into many languages, from many languages, namely German, English, I think Mandarin, Japanese, Ukrainian, and Latvian. I only found Chinese, Volha, because in Germany you always say Chinese, but in English it's Mandarin, isn't it? Do you speak all? It's very impressive.
Yeah, but you know, to translate doesn't mean to speak the language.
Yes, I do. You also have a PhD in linguistics, and Wikipedia calls you one of the most important lyricists of Belarus today, and you have received several prizes for your work. Congratulations. You're also a member of the PEN Center Belarus and of the Independent Writers Association of Belarus. And your poems have been translated into more than 10 languages, which is quite a feat for if you were a German writer, by the way. In German, your book Mutantengarten has been published in 2020, and your debut novel was Camel Travel, and this has just been published, right?
Yeah, also, I mean, it was published in Belarus in 2019, and in 2021, in February, it appeared in German as well in Droschel Verlag.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yirgalem Fisseha Mebrahtu. I hope I pronounce your name correctly.
Yeah, thank you.
You are a journalist and a poet. You were born in Eritrea in 1981, and you co-founded a literature association in Adi-Khei, which was shut down by the government to regulate private media who were often regime critical. You started a program as a program producer and presenter for Radio Bana. In February 2009, all employees of that radio station were imprisoned, and you as well?
Yeah.
You were kept in a military prison and no visitors were allowed, so you haven't seen your family and friends for 6 years in that time. And then you were moved to a high security prison called Mai Swra.
Mai Swra.
Yeah, Mai Swra. And spent, like I said, 6 years partly in isolation without charges brought up against you or a due process. I hope I got that right, and I'm quite appalled by what has been done to you. Thank you both for being here tonight. And since you are poets, I'm not a poet, I'm a writer. I would like to ask Yirgalem to start our evening off with a short poem in your native language, please, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. My mother language is Tigrinya. Tigrinya. This poem was written while I was in prison 10 years ago, and it tells about the size of my cell and how I was deal with it and how I was suffering. Let's Shallai Kandomatei Midra Kandarate Ayera Buntaro Mu'otachem Tabel Ushatia Gahanam Ma'al Afgabel Loms Mariruni Kusorai Kalkun Sabgadifu ولا سيطان يكون نعنا يتزبلني نابيا مبالكم. Thank you.
Thank you. Yirgalem, what does it mean to you to write and read your poetry in your in your native language? And do you write in English more now or in another language to have people understand you?
No, just I am writing in Tigrinya, only in Tigrinya, but some of my poems are on the way to translate to English and to German as well by other people, other writers and translators.
And what does it mean to you to be able to maybe publish even in your native language too?
Come again, bitte, please.
Bitte. Is it very important to you to write and to publish in your native language?
Yeah, it's very important for me because as we all know, the language is the main tool for writers and poets. So it's a good opportunity for me to write here, but I wish I could publish it in Eritrea.
Okay. So I hope that your work will also get published in Germany in your native language, because that is one way to communicate with your fellow citizens and people in Eritrea, right? But we'll come to the publishing situation later in this talk. I'd like to start off with Volha. Volha, in 2020, on the height of the corona pandemic, we learned about the manipulation of the voting process in Belarus, which was probably only not the first of these instances. Lukashenko stays in power until today, and violence has erupted in Belarus again and again. What is the situation in Belarus now, and with regards to writers and journalists?
Thank you, Lena, first of all, for this invitation and for your presentation. Thank you, dear Yirgalem. Yeah, you're right. So the situation in Belarus is really dramatic nowadays after the presidential elections in August 2020. But, you know, the paradoxical thing is like maybe some Westerners can think that why suddenly Belarusians are so unhappy with this regime, but the problem is it's not suddenly. This situation has been going on for 25 years already when this president came to power. And we had also mass protest after each elections, because each of these elections were rigged, and people were not didn't agree, and they took to the street. But I think because now in 2020 the situation with mass media is a little bit different. I mean, we are more globalized now. We get information faster. You know, the access to internet is quite good. So that's why what happens in Belarus immediately went to Western channels, and Belarus made the top of the news, so to say. And I think it's a good thing because it makes finally visible what has been maybe surfaced, because Belarus is one of the European countries, and many people, unfortunately and sadly, even don't know that it exists. Some people think it's part of Russia. Very often I get the question about the language. Oh, Belarusian, isn't it Russian, or is it dialect, or what? No, it's completely different language. And so on and so forth. And now today, after the protest, I mean, they were really brutally suppressed. And some people were already killed. Lots of people were arrested or got fines, and just like really for peaceful demonstrations, because people, when they go to the street, they don't use arms. They just like, like peacefully say that they are against what's going on. As for the situation with journalists and writers and let's say artists in broader sense, sure, now you can feel it. Maybe at the beginning of the situation it wasn't that harsh, but I think now regime is really getting paranoid. And they try to clean just like everyone, really, because you can be arrested for simple nothing things. For example, we had the Chernobyl anniversary on the 26th of April. And in one of the theaters, there should have been a performance based on Svetlana Alexievich's novel Chernobyl Prayer. But it was banned just because Svetlana Alexievich is openly in opposition now, and although it has to do with this Chernobyl thing, like nothing political, so to say, but still the government is afraid of any possible vision of opposition or counter ideas. So lots of journalists are in prison now, and for example, 2 journalists received were sentenced for 2 years just for filming, and because it was their job they were filming the protests, and they got 2 years. Yeah.
And now, and you mentioned that already, I found it very interesting that there were hardly any news about Belarus before August 2020, and I mean, I'm kind of aware of the news mostly, but about Belarus, there was hardly anything at all. And now, finally, there is a news coverage about your country too, which is a very good thing. You already mentioned the role of the internet, actually. So is Twitter, like social media and Twitter, and I don't know, encrypted messengers, for example, are they helping the cause of the opposition? Is this necessary to be able to meet and to communicate with each other?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, it works both ways as well, because the regime uses social networks as well. And they also give fines for people or sentences if they post something which they don't like, So that's why it works both ways.
Yeah. The nature of my question is that in Germany we are actually talking about, I don't know, shutting messengers off because sometimes right-wing radicalists use them to open up discussions and post pictures of Hitler and whatnot. And sometimes we forget that for other people in a different political climate, these messengers or social media are necessary to actually do their work and to be able to communicate with each other. But yes, I asked Yirgalem about her language. In which language do you prefer to publish at the moment, Volha?
I prefer to be published or to write.
In which language?
Well,
both actually, both English and German. Publishing and writing. So,
Yeah, at the moment, so I have always been writing in Belarusian, my mother language, but because I've spent already almost 2 years in German-speaking area, so to say. Last year I was in Austria. This year in Germany. I also started to write in German, and yeah, it's very interesting to open this language from this part, because German was my second language at the university, like foreign language. Yeah, but this is one thing. But when you start to write on the language, it's something else. And yeah, I mean, it's really an adventure for me, and I hope something nice will come out. But sometimes, I get this impression that there is, I don't know, some kind of over language, like some universal language which can function in poetry, or which poetry reveals most or in a best way. I'm sorry for prose writers. I don't mean to, to say something bad about prose.
I am a prose writer, by the way. I don't write poems, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm sorry.
No,
but
it's okay.
But I think just like in poetry, there is some kind of mystery and something unexplainable and sometimes ephemeral, which gives you understand the language as a phenomenon better. And in this case, when you stand a little bit high up over the languages, let's say, yeah, so like, and that's why I think it's interesting when you start or you try to write in different languages, because it gives you this perspective. Yeah.
And we'll hear a poem by you at the end of this session. Yirgalem, would you agree to Volha's suggestion that poetry is a higher form of language over all languages? Yes?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's interesting, yeah. Volha, how did you come to Germany? You happened to be here and couldn't leave towards your home country anymore, right?
Yeah, that's true. In 2019, I got the scholarship for writers in Graz, and I spent there 1 year. But then it was the end of my scholarship, and the protests started in September, and it was dangerous for me to go home. And I was lucky as I got invitation from Villa Waldberta in München, and this is the place where I got the information about Penzentrum Deutschland and the possibility of this program. So I applied, and yeah, it was very big luck for me, and I'm really grateful for such a great opportunity.
Yeah, they do good work there. I'm very happy about that. Yirgalem, we talked about you before a bit. You've been imprisoned for working at a radio station in Eritrea, among other things. And as we talked today before, you said that there are still journalists, many journalists in Eritrea who have been imprisoned 20 years ago and have never been seen again. I think you said you wanted to show their faces too?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Would
you like to say something about them?
Yeah, sure. I want to say them, but before I say about them, I wanted to say other thing. I'm a friend of these guys, and co-founders of 2 private newspapers, and they were supposed to arrest with them. Were courageous and brilliant journalists. They passed away last 5 weeks. In 1 month's differences. One of them were living in USA, and the other one was living in Canada. They were fighting, and literally they were voice of their friends for 20 years. And I want to send my condolences to their families, their friends, and to all fighters for justice and for free press. And then when I passed to these guys, they are 12. They were founders, chief editors, and contributors of the newspaper. And all newspapers are shut down, and the government shut down the newspapers and arrested this guy, the writers and journalists, and they are in prison for 20 years, and nobody knows where they're about, where they are they alive or not? Nobody knows. So their family are suffering. Some of them are died. Some of them are in hard, painful situation, and all. They were mentors for many of us, and that's what I want to say about them. They are 20 years in prison.
Yeah, that is something I think nobody can understand who hasn't either lost someone to such a situation or been through that. And you've been to prison for 6 years. I cannot understand that as well. May I ask, how was your release? How did you get out of that prison? Was that something official?
Yeah, it was official, but by the way, it's nothing. There is no concrete answer for this question. But I want to use what the high military officer said to us at that day. He said to us, "We arrested them because we ordered to arrest you, and we are releasing you because we are ordered to release you. And we released it because we were lucky. That is not the character of the regime was in power in Eritrea. So I would say I released it because I was lucky."
Okay. Yeah, in Germany we have a word or a saying that even a soldier is supposed to think about the orders that they are given at some point. We've learned that the hard way from the Nazi regime, that there are certain orders you are not allowed to follow because we hope to live in a Rechtsstaat, so in a rightful state where citizens have rights towards their government, against the government, and the government is only supposed to act against you in a form that is agreed in our Grundgesetz, in our constitution, basically. So this is deeply missing in Eritrea and obviously in Belarus as well. How did you come to Germany, Yirgalem?
There is, I think, in PEN International or every PEN, there are 3 programs: writers in prison, writers at risk, writers in exile. Yeah. So I went through these 3. First, I was on the list of writers or journalists in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I arrived Kampala, capital city of Uganda, I contact to friends, and some of them were members of writers, the PEN Eritrea in exile. So they report to PEN International, and through that I got this opportunity to come here.
Yeah. So the network of solidarity that the PEN has spun around the world functions and works, and sorry, that's a good thing.
Yeah, very good thing.
Let's just keep it like that. Okay. The day before yesterday, Leander Zukov talked to Asli Erdogan and Nazli Karabekoglu about the state of freedom of expression in Turkey, for example. And Nazli said something very interesting that night. She said there are 3 levels of censorship in an unfree country. First of all, it's self-censorship, to not lose your own privileges, so you go and you self-censor. The second is censorship via peer pressure by your fellow citizens. And the third one then, and only the third one, is basically the formal censorship and the consequences by the government. Have you experienced these three levels of censorship as well, Volha? Or would you rather say the state of Belarus is only two of them only?
Well, I should say it's a very clever remark and a very interesting one. When I think about my country, I agree that there is a very strong, and I think this is the most not dangerous, but the most sad one, the self one. When people are afraid, but it's also a very interesting thing, because how it works, I'm not sure whether it works only with the totalitarian state. Sure, it's not the case for really democratic states, but the state itself as a phenomenon is not that easy, because, for example, if we look in the philosophy or political philosophy, we will see that one of the tasks of the state is to bring up subjects, and you as a subject, you have to answer when the state calls you. This is not my idea, this is for Althusser, so the so-called interpellation. So this is connected with this self-censorship. So when the state says to you, this and this and this is not welcomed or is against our ideology, you have to answer. So you have to behave in a certain way. And I think in Belarus, quite a lot of people do this. Sometimes even the local leaders or heads of department at universities, or sure, it depends on the person, but there are people who even overdo it, because sometimes when we had this example, friends of mine, also a feminist activist, Irina Salamatina, she was organizing feminist art critic exhibition. She invited artists from different post-Soviet countries, female artists in Minsk, and we organized this exhibition, and we had to print out the poster, and we went to the printing center. And they said, no, we will not print it because it contains the word feminism. And we were really shocked, because, and this is for me the example of this self-censorship, when, it's not, sure, it's political, but at that time it was 2014, 15. So escalation was not that high, but still people on the places, so to say, at the grassroots level, sometimes you're amazed how people, are afraid or don't want to. So I think this is the most dangerous and sad one of censorship.
Yeah, and also it keeps people from taking a stance or forming a political view, because you are not exposed to different opinions and the freedom of expression. Yirgalem, you nodded a lot when Volha said, this too, right? Would you share your experience?
Yeah. Three of them. I have experience with three of them. The three levels. There is no way to oppose the government openly in Eritrea. There is no way. But naturally, poems has different meaning, and there is between the lines or such kind of message. So first, when I was, everybody, if he or she wants published book, he should submit the copy to the censorship office. And before I submit my collection of poems, I did the same thing. I censored myself first, and I removed some of my poems, which those were openly criticized or oppose the government. So I was in the first level. And then when I showed to my friends, they advised me to remove more poems, which has a message between the lines. And some of my friends of mine were advising me to remain silent or not to write such kind of poems. And then finally, when after I submit my collection of poems, it's in that office for 12 years still now. Mm-hmm. So I never categorize them these levels, but I experienced them, all of them.
Yeah, the first level that I just mentioned, or that Nazli Karabiyukoglu mentioned, the self-censorship to not lose privileges, I think that is the reason behind us having the secrecy of letters, for example, and of people like the government not being allowed to look into your emails or your Facebook account technically, because you need that space of developing your opinion and of secrecy for your own good, and also to be able to criticize the government, right? Volha, did I cut you short right now? Did you want to add something? Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, all three levels of censorship obviously are in place in Eritrea and possibly in Belarus on different levels of the scale. Let's stay with the publishing companies a bit. You said you tried to publish the poems, and there was some taken out and some never published. What's the situation of publishing companies, for example, in Belarus, Volha?
Yeah, at the moment it's really harsh because if you run a private, non-state publishing house, you have to be really, really careful. What is more, now with pandemic, people buy fewer books, and with protests, people also buy fewer books. My publisher, when I talked to him, he said to me that now even children's book, which used to be quite popular among parents, I mean, at least if you publish and sell a children's book, you will be able to do some profit. But now it's not the case because people even stopped buying children's book, which for me is also very bad sign. As also economic situation is bad because in Belarus we have the highest tax for publishing activities in comparison to other even neighboring countries. So we have 20% of this tax in comparison, for example, to Russia, which has only 13%. And sure, I mean, you can imagine the size of Russian market, which is like very big one, and neighboring market. And in Belarus, we have Russian as the second state language. So it's really kind of the concurrency with which you cannot just compete. And the other oppression, sure, is political and ideological pressure for our publishing houses, because they're not so numerous, but the ones which exist. So they publish contemporary Belarusian literature in Belarusian. And at the moment, because everything which is connected with Belarusian is considered to be like opposition, so you're really, really under, like close surveillance. And one of the publishers, for example, already he had a visit from financial police, and they make it very clever. They never make it political. They make it financial. So they say you don't pay taxes, or you have some violations in tax regulations, or whatever. They give you huge fines, after which you just cannot survive and become bankruptcy as a company, things like that. And my publisher, for example, also calls me and tells Volha, when we talk about our plans and to do this or that book, he says to me, Volha, let's wait, because now I'm not sure in anything, because every day he waits. People from these secret services can come to him and start asking questions, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Besides, what I should say maybe is, like, in Belarus, we don't have support from the government or from the state for private, independent, small publishing houses. We don't have programs which would support the translations from Belarusian into other foreign languages, which other post-Soviet countries, most of them do have it. Mm-hmm. So it's really, like, to work and live and be active in such a situation is really a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I assume so. And I mean, for example, translations are of the essence for smaller language circles, so that the literature can be shared across borders and read across borders and create understanding and a feeling for different cultures, right? Yirgalem, do you know how the situation in Eritrea is about publishing companies, roughly?
There is no private. I think there are small shops, but they ask you to bring permission from the censorship office, and they don't work freely. And the one and very known company is owned by the government. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you cannot work with them. They ask you to put something you don't want to do, or to. So it's not free. It's the governmental. It works for propaganda. Mm-hmm. So there is no free.
There's no free publishing
house.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, yeah, that is one situation. Do you remember the first, children grow up with this huge space of dreams, this huge space of opportunities in their head, and this huge, understanding of, or no real understanding of what to say and what not to say. So they don't know what's appropriate and they don't know what's politically correct in that country. I would like to ask you if you remember the first time where you really got in contact with, clashed with your opinion or your words that you uttered not being okay in your country, where you realized, I said something wrong, or I said something that might be censored, or where you were hushed. Do you remember? Like the first contact with censorship, basically. Maybe?
Yeah, the first experience for me related with your question was the day the private newspaper shut down and the journalists, because I was high school student at that time. I was a contributor to this media while I was high school student. Mm-hmm. So I was grooming to be journalist by this mentor. So suddenly, when the government shut down and the journalists disappeared, it was shocking.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Volha, do you still remember?
Well, yeah, but it's paradoxical because I didn't say anything wrong or anything which I thought would relate to this, but still they came to me, the people from Secret Service, to have a talk. And that's just because I went to the Congress of Belarusian Studies, which was held in Lithuania, in the neighboring country. Mm-hmm. And I was going there during the weekdays, not even during my working days as a university professor, And after that, they called me and said, we want to talk to you. And I was shocked because I went to that Congress, with pure linguistic paper, which has nothing to do with, but the thing itself was considered to be political by them, and this is how, you should understand how they work, and they're really, I think all those secret Dienste services and their regimes, their main theme is to grow fear in people, so that people were not sure what they say can be wrong or right. And this is the most terrible and again sad thing, because no matter what you say can be considered as bad thing by the government, and you can be taken to the prison. So you don't know basically the rules of the game, so to say, So
Yeah.
And literature is so, journalism might be precise, and journalism is about political statements or calling out political statements, but literature is always more obscure, and you can interpret so much into
Exactly.
writing on both sides. So people, like you said, the Secret Service people obviously always interpret something subversive into literature, right? So if you do literature, if you write literature, the general assumption is you are against the system.
Yeah, because you're the person who thinks.
Yes, yeah, okay. That is, it's I'm of a lack of words at the moment. It's just, So being a writer makes you an enemy of the state by itself.
Or an artist in a general sense, yes.
An artist in the general sense, yeah. Because it might contain something that is not okay, or it can be interpreted as against people in power. Okay. Let's talk a bit about, you're both women, and you left your countries. Is that how's the situation of women and female writers in specific in your countries? Is it any different than of men? Volha?
If you look at the, maybe official data or figures, you will see that Belarus is quite a progressive state in terms of gender equality. But sure, again, this is beautiful surface, and underneath it's patriarchal reality, which really, sure, now it's 2020 and the situation is a bit different. When I started as a writer, and I was among this first wave, let's say, of people who introduced these ideas of feminism and gender equality. And I remember how even on the level of language, I had to prove to the editors of the literary magazines, no, I want this, for example, because in Belarus we have gender in the language. Mm-hmm. And in German, you have, for example, wer, it's considered to be who, considered to be masculine, wer hat seine Lippenstift vergessen? Yeah, so who forgot his Lippenstift? And I deliberately used, so deconstructed the language. And it was hard because the editors, they corrected it all the time. And they said to me, no, you cannot write like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, but now, sure, the press changed. The publication system changed. Now you can more or less do it freely, especially if you pay yourself for your book, yeah. Mm-hmm. But sure, the position of women needs much to be desired, because I think still now, in Western media, you can hear this cliche already now that Belarus has female face of revolution. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we see lots of women on the streets, and that's great, and this is true. I think women are the strongest part of the world, and in Belarus in particular. But the problem is that women in Belarus are not considered to be political subjects. This is the sad thing. What I mean is like now they're also used, or some of them themselves even view this idea as, oh no, we wait. For example, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the opposition candidate for presidency, she started to run for presidency because her husband was arrested and he was the main candidate in opposition. And she was saying in her speeches that I'm not a politician. I don't want power. I want to be back in the kitchen and fry some meat for my husband, and things like that. Make you think twice that female face does not necessarily mean feministic agenda,
Absolutely. And it seems to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, that she tried to use that female role that was expected of her as a shield against oppression, right?
Yes, on the one hand. On the other hand, I think if she started to view some feministic ideas so openly, the majority of the population wouldn't follow her, because as I've said, Belarus is quite a patriarchal society, and I think most of men wouldn't consider a woman to be their president, if she is so openly feminist, On the other hand, you're right, because Lukashenko is such a very hegemonic masculinity image. I think opposition used it very well to put this, motherly or feminine figure, which would counterpart this harsh masculinity, and it worked. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll come to the question in the chat in a minute. I wanted to ask Yirgalem about the situation of women and female writers in Eritrea.
Yeah. Culturally, there is a problem in Eritrea. The culture doesn't see equal decades years ago. But now then, there is a good signs to the society move towards the gender equality, started to trust women as courage and brilliant. But the government started to use this the gender equality in partings. I do have a problem because I do have a problem, but not because of a woman, but I didn't treat it as a woman. When I was, for example, when I was in prison, I was not treated as a woman. I was treated just as a prisoner. I had many problems with menstruation period, for example. There is no women guards and clinic workers or around us. Everything was done by men.
By men, yeah.
Yeah, and when I was admitted to hospital, I was sleeping among the many prisoners, men prisoners. So there is a problem with the government. It was not. I was not attacked because of I am a woman, but I was not treated as a woman.
Which sometimes one could say is a good thing too, but it's obviously like when it comes to female hygiene or to medicine and stuff like that, it's obviously a problem.
Yeah, I was suffering so many times, but I couldn't get the pant layer or bandage.
Yeah. And by the way, you just said something about treating women as political subjects or as courageous and standing up for themselves. I think you two are some of the strongest women I've ever met. So I think there's no doubt about that. We have a couple of comments and questions from the chat that I wanted to get into the discussion. Cassandra said that as a German, she feels reminded of the DDR, so Eastern Germany artists, which wrote songs and poetry against the government as well. She agrees with me that you're very brave women, both of you, and that back in the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, there were quite some artists who wrote too openly what they thought and disappeared forever too. I think, yeah, that's part of our German history as well, of course. And let's not start to talk about Nazi Germany and artists. There is a question which I find quite interesting. Was there never any attempt to take any benefit of your work and use that for a governmental point of view? So did you write something which, like, the government tried to use for themselves, or to machinate, or to use you and your personality? No. Yirgalem, that's not happening in Eritrea, right?
For their benefit.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
But that's why my colleagues and I went to prison. We didn't want to serve for propaganda. We don't want to write. So that's why, because before we arrested, we were blocked from the Eritrean media, the One Television. So our name was not allowed to be heard in the governmental media before we arrested. So yeah, they do, but I'm glad that I didn't do any for the propaganda.
So they tried to pressure you into writing
Sure.
their lines, of course, and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Volha, what about you? Did they ever use your poetry for them, or was it too feminist?
No,
Yeah.
no, I think they're far more not interested in what I'm doing.
They tried to hush you, yeah?
Yeah, or it's just like how to say, because we do have, actually, why it is written I'm in the Independent Writers Union, because we have actually two writers union in Belarus.
Okay.
One official, pro-governmental, and then oppositional one. And I know that just people who work in state publishing houses or state literary magazines, they kind of, I'm not sure now, but earlier they were made to enter the official one, the official unit. So, and if they were in an official, they were asked either to leave that one or they would be fired from their places. And luckily because I was working at the university, and maybe, I didn't make it so official that I doubt like people in the university even knew I wrote, that's why I didn't have such a dilemma or choice, but those people who did that choice, and I really feel sorry for them, because but I'm not judging them. I'm not saying anything, in this regard. I'm just saying I was lucky that they, but I was invited for some of, we have network of libraries, children's libraries, and because I write for children, and my book also was very popular, and they invited me for the event. But I find it okay, because I, as a taxpayer of the country, I support this, and I think I have a right to go to the library and to perform there for children, because these are the same children as, not considering about politics, anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have another interesting question from the chat. Getting recognition from, for example, Germany or other countries for your work, for your poetry, for your articles, maybe awards. Does it help your cause? Does it make your life even more dangerous, or both? Yirgalem?
For me, it's fine. It's reward for it's not only for me, for others, to my fellow writers, and it makes us more. It's to work more. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So bring them on, the awards and the yeah. No, I mean the question behind this a bit is also like, I mean, you're writing in your native language, which I'm sorry I cannot pronounce.
Tigrinya, I can help you.
Tigrinya?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it like it doesn't like do your fellow Eritrean people, do you think they are enabled to read your books more? Do they try to read, or is it more like they don't dare to read your books?
Unfortunately, the 1/3 of the population of Eritrea is in exile. So even though my book is not allowed to be read in Eritrea, there is no problem.
Okay, so there are enough
readers, enough communication, enough network. So it doesn't have any influence for.
So there are people who read your books in your native language, and they just don't live in your home country anymore. Okay, that is bad enough, actually. Yeah. Volha, what do you think? Like getting awards and these pen stipendiates, does it endanger you, or?
I really don't know. I think, again, sometimes, our government is a little bit like pretends you don't exist. I think this is their strategy, because even when Svetlana Alexievich got the Nobel Prize, on the national television, nothing. There were no news about that, as if it didn't happen. So I think it's a clever strategy they have. So that's why, I think it's, and the Belarusian literary scene as it is on its own also a little bit like quite closed, and I don't know if you get the book or two in Germany, it doesn't mean for them also that much, I really don't understand how it works. But for me to have such an opportunity, and what I really especially like in being here in Germany or in Western Europe, is really this attention to you as an author. And this attention to you, to what you write, and because I happen to have several readings, and people really listen, they ask questions, they come for poetry readings, it's really amazing. Because in Belarus it's not the case. I think people
are afraid, possibly.
No, I mean, because it was even before the protests started. I think there is some kind of maybe apathy already. People are so tired of this life, and maybe they stopped a little bit like trusting or believing in literature as means of thought-provoking means. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot to think about.
And I mean, obviously, stipendiates by the Penn Center Germany or any other European Penn Center and awards for your books raises awareness for the problems in your country and the fight that you are basically fighting. So from this side on, it's a very, very good thing. But I found the question very interesting. Does it endanger you to actually get awards? And I'm quite happy that you're saying it's more like the government tries to ignore you and forget about you and depublish maybe your books in your home countries, which is bad enough, but that it's not actively
trying to pursue it.
Yeah, that is a good thing. We have the question, Yirgalem, if you could maybe find, we will have a couple of more questions, but I was wondering, the chat asks for another short poem in your native language. If you could think about that while we're talking and maybe prepare in your mind for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about the situation of writers in your countries. Does the chat have more questions towards either Yirgalem or Volha? I will gladly pass this on. Also, if you have, what interests me is, do you have a perspective here in Germany? Are you safe for the foreseeable future at the moment, like both financially and of course, from the publishing perspective, or is the network again working for you guys, or do you think, oh my God, I don't know what to do in 2 years' time? Yirgalem, what do you think?
I was thinking about the poem.
Yeah. Then I'll ask Volha first. No, I'll ask Volha first. So is it what do you think?
Yeah, no. I think here or starting already in Austria, I was surprised that actually you can live as an author, even as a poet a little bit. Because maybe it's not an easy life, but at least with readings, with if you have to talkings like our, or you write some texts and you get paid for this. This is not the case in Belarus. So in Belarus, in order to be a writer is just like a hobby, and this is also maybe the attitude of the society. First of all, people think that if you're a writer, you earn from your books, but that's not true, because you never get anything from your books. The second thing, they think if you write, it's just like your hobby. Why should you be paid? You do it for your fun. That's why you have to have a second job or first job, and then you have to write, I don't know, in summer when you have holidays, or when you go from work to home.
I think your situation might be special, because actually the situation of German writers is also kind of like that.
I know.
I am in the very privileged position that maybe I've been there long enough. I don't know, but I'm writing for audiobooks and for novels and for computer games also. So I'm able to make a living off of my writing, but there's only a very small percentage of German writers who are able to do that, actually. So I think
I agree.
The pharma is like something between 7 and 13% of the writers. But I mean, they can actually have a living off of their work. So compared to your situation, this is golden. Yeah. That is an interesting question. How do male writers in your home countries react to your work? Are they respecting your, for example, female or feminist perspectives, or do they try to ignore you away too, Volha? Or is this just different?
It's different, but because I just try not to provoke anyone, on specifically or something. I just do my job and write, and if somebody, I did have some very nasty remarks about some of my poems, or for example, when I was translating one chapter from Chuck Palahniuk, Fight Club, one person wrote how a woman can translate a male author. That was for me something, what? Really stupid. So so things like that do happen, especially on the internet, comments. But I mean, I don't pay attention to those, but sure, I mean, the writers whom I respect, or my publisher, he's also a writer and poet, or my other colleagues, they're quite progressive in that term.
I mean, in Germany too, we have like the differentiation between literature and women's literature too. So it's not everything golden here. Yirgalem, please.
Thank you. Basically, there is no, the writers in Eritrea, women writers are not many. There are few, maybe you can find 7 or something. We know each other and we are few. So I don't receive such kind of feeling from women, from men. They were encouraging me, and still they are encouraging me. If I take myself as an example.
So allow me the question, why did you start writing? Why did you start poetry?
The first time when I was writing poems, because of my teacher was inviting the women to write something. So there was in elementary level, when I was in elementary school, there was at the morning we were some students were read poems for the students on the stage of our school, and there were only boys. So our director asked that if there is a woman to participate with them. So I wrote to answer his question or to receive his invitation, and then I'm still writing.
Nice, yeah, very nice. Volha, did you always want to write poetry, or
prose? I mean, it came quite late. The prose, yeah.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I obviously started writing poetry in my youth, I think too, but I don't think I was very good, and I stopped, and I think it's a good thing. But I do appreciate poetry very much, so I admire that if you can do that. But I also admire it if people can write humor, which I also cannot do very well. It's an art. Okay, I'll look up my questions, and the chat is silent at the moment. So let's return to the dreams that I mentioned before. Freedom of expression, that's why we're here together, because this is a week of freedom of expression. Means expressing your dreams freely and your thoughts freely. What are your dreams for the situation in your countries? It doesn't need to be the big picture, but like small dreams, like what would you like to see? Obviously freedom of expression, but is there something else? Yirgalem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this year you all may know that in the report from CPJ about free press this year, Eritrea is ranked at the last of the list.
Yes, the absolute last. Yes.
Last of the list, and it's
of worldwide expression of press. Freedom of press.
Worldwide, and this is not for. Of course, the list was about free press, but my beloved Eritrea is at the last in every list, in every sector, in everything. So my dream is to see my country at least in average level. At least in average level. And I always dream about the journalists who are in prison, to see them, at least to see them again and to hear their stories.
Yeah.
And I always dream to publish my book in Eritrea without censorship.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on 18th September 21, or was it 2020? It was 20 years, like the imprisonment, right?
September 18, 20 years.
Yeah, of the imprisonment of the journalists in Eritrea.
Yeah.
Volha, if you could dream up or change one thing in your in Belarus, what would it be?
Yeah, sure, that would be the political situation. I would change it because it has very close relations with economics. I mean, economy and politics, they also always go hand in hand. But what for me is the saddest thing is like I also have many friends who are in exile or just left the country because it was not really, I mean, you couldn't pursue what you wanted to do really. And this is sad because when you have to leave your country and you cannot do in your country what you really want to do, and you can't share or make this input into your country, yes? This is what I would like to change. And for that, it would be really nice if all the democratic institutions could start working in Belarus, if, for example, so that you as a citizen can feel yourself protected. If something is wrong, you can go to the court and you know that your rights would be protected, that, constitution is followed, and so on and so forth, to be at home in your country.
Yes, absolutely. I understand that dream. Thank you very much for this. So if Yirgalem has one last poem for us, you would make some people out there really happy. And afterwards, we will be finishing off with Volha's poem in German, actually.
Okay. Before I read my poem, as we know, Eritrea is at the last of the list in Free Press. But on May 3rd May, the Minister of Information from Eritrea posted something in Twitter, and I will read you that sentence. Eritrea is committed to protecting freedom of expression, journalists, and media freedom, both nationally and internationally. This is joke.
Yeah.
This is joke.
It is. It would be if it were funny. It's not funny at all, but yes.
Yeah, it's not funny, but it's joke.
Yeah, it is a joke, yeah.
Some jokes make you cry, maybe. Makes cry. Okay. This poem was written in 2013 when I was in prison. And it says to Siham. It's like a letter. Siham is a young lady. She's in prison she's a daughter of a minister who was working with the government. And after he escaped from country, the government arrested her while she was 15 years old. And she is in prison for last 18 years. She's 24 or something like that. So this is, I wrote a letter to her. Unfortunately, her father was responsible for my imprisonment, but nothing to do with it. She's a young lady. No, I was, I was shocked when I heard she is in prison, even though he has something with my case. Nap Siham. يوا عشلي وانا صعدا لبي عمت كده خوينو حماق كاب ترخبي انتي تبللخي انتي كتحسبي نبعت دوتو قرسي كاب عربنا بعربي كاب دوسي انكلو زمل اختي كاب مقرباي كونن كاب فتوتي كاب قشخي كونن كاب بتصحتي مشاقر سخي ايناي تزلخيو سلامتا يتصحكي كنت كولوكيو دحن دولخخ كما يتهلوي انتي رئيخي ابو خاب تأتوي اسكعكي حكدو نابرا بتتسلمات فللي زيبلو قحتا مسمع مات بتسفات رايو ዝፍለኻ ሙማት እስከበሊ እንታይ በዲለ ዶ ትብሊ ወሪዱኪ እንታይ ክትብድሊ ተረካብ ዓድዮ ደኣ ኮይኑ ክንዲ ትፃወቲ ምስ መዛኑ ክንዲ ትመሃሪ ምስ መዛኑ እቲ እከይ ያውዲቑልካ ዓይኑ ሕለ ውፅዓ ፍዳ ዘለኽዎ ኣብ ኣቦኹ እኳ እንተደለኽዎ ከምኡ ዓለም ስነ ይብለኪ ምስክነይቲ ኣብ ምንታይ ውዒልኪ ጓል ኣቦኺ ምዃንሲ ትረፍኪ ጓል እዝጊ ኢኹሞ ባዕሉ የርህወልኪ ኣንቲ ዕሸል ውልደ ሸዊት ብርስን ጆሆናይ በዳሊ ምዃንኪ ኣሓዝን
It's a very beautiful language.
Thank you.
And very beautifully read because we could see your emotion on your face. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now we're going to finish off this discussion with a poem by Volha Hapeyeva about, let me just quickly, the Schwarzer Apfelbaum, the black apple tree. And I would like the people who stayed on late at Friday night and listened to us discuss the freedom of expression in both Eritrea and Belarus. Thank you very much for staying with us. And the final words should be a poem by Volha.
Okay. An idea just came to me. I thought maybe, Lena, you would like to read it in German and I can. No?
Me? Should I read it?
And I read the beginning in Belarusian.
Okay. So
do you have it?
I would try, of course, yes.
Okay.
So who is going to read first?
I will read the beginning, maybe some lines, yes, and then you just start from the beginning.
Yeah. Thank God I still have this open.
Yeah, no, because I just thought maybe it could be too much, because it's also emotional and I'm afraid I will start crying.
Me too. But I will try.
Okay, thank you. Чорная яблыня. Раніца пачынаецца з перакладу імёнаў, людзей, якіх расшукваюць паліцыя, родныя, нейкія службы. У суседняй краіне вайна, але, як заўсёды, тэрміналогія ў кожнага боку свая.
Thank you. Also a very beautiful language. And now I've never read this out loud, but I will do my very best. Schwarzer Apfelbaum. Der Morgen beginnt mit der Übersetzung von Namen. Menschen werden gesucht von Polizei, Verwandten, verschiedenen Diensten. Im Nachbarland herrscht Krieg. Aber wie immer hat jede Seite ihre eigene Terminologie. Alles, was ich über diese Menschen weiß, ist das Datum ihrer Geburt. Durch alle von mir übersetzten Briefe zieht sich die Ungewissheit wie etwas, das man ertragen muss und nicht weiß, wie lange noch. Dann plötzlich Feststellung des Auffindungsorts einer Person und dann ein Nachtrag mit der Bestätigung der Identifizierung des Leichnams. Aus der Ungewissheit, dem Schweben, dem Dunst wird ein schwarzer Apfelbaum. Unzählige begrub ich in meinen Übersetzungen, stand bei der Mutter, dem Vater, dem Ehemann, der Liebsten, ging fort, klopfte am nächsten Tag an die nächste Tür, sah, wie sich Falten von Unglauben und Wut über Gesichter zogen, identifizierte Körper und nicht identifizierte Seelen, ein Totenschein. Wie übersetzt man den richtig? Und hier bin ich in der Gefängniszelle und schreibe einen Brief. Und hier bin ich im Schützengraben, versuche die Handschrift zu lesen. Schickt mir warme Socken und ein Schachspiel, euer Sohn 2017. Ich bin jetzt auf dem Grund. Der Tod ist der Tod. Könnte ich nur mit einem kleinen Stück Ruhm sterben, 1942. Und ich frage, wer ist dieser Ruhm und was macht er mit den Herzen? Er schenkt der Sinnlosigkeit ringsum ein wenig Sinn, als wäre doch nicht alles umsonst. Nur Mut und trösten sie sich mit dem Gedanken, dass die Sache, für die ihr Mann sein Leben gab, die Befreiung der Heimat war, 1945. Es wäre besser gewesen, man hätte uns getötet, anstatt uns so leiden zu lassen. Olena Kamianec-Podilski, 1941. Briefe schreiben und auf einen Orden hoffen, Briefe schreiben und sich Sorgen machen, ob das Geld angekommen ist. Briefe schreiben und nicht zu wissen, ob es der letzte ist. Oder einen Brief schreiben und es zu wissen. Sag Sinatschka danke für die Fotokarten, auch wenn mir eins nicht gefällt. Sie hat die Lippen geschminkt und das auch noch ungeschickt. 1941, Kiew. Weihnachten haben wir im Schützengraben verbracht, aber ich hatte noch ein Stückchen Christmas Pudding dabei. Ich sollte besser nicht murren. 1914, Edward. Schlimm, die einzige Frau im Regiment zu sein. Wir schlafen alle in einem Unterstand, trocknen vor einem Ofen. Hosen und Stiefel haben die falsche Größe. Maria, 1945. Alles ertragen wie alle, sogar mehr als alle. Zu denken, du bist ein Held wie jeder, aber später verschweigen müssen, dass du dabei warst und die Orden verstecken. Wer will schon mit einer Soldatin Bekanntschaft machen? Wir wissen genau, wie du dir die Orden verdient hast. Und dass man ihr die Beine abgetrennt hat und dass der Schmerz unerträglich war und dass sie keine Angst gehabt hat, sich dem Kommandeur zu verweigern. Das alles zählt nicht. Aber was zählt dann, frage ich mich. Mit jungen Krankenschwestern schlafen, der Kameradin eins in die Röhre schieben, die Tochter des Feindes vergewaltigen. Du bekommst keinen Orden, wenn du nicht sicher bist, ob du schießen sollst oder nicht, wenn du Mitgefühl zeigst für die eigenen Leute und die Feinde, wenn du dein eigenes Kind ertrinken lässt, um andere zu retten, wenn du dich um den Ehemann einer Fremden kümmerst, wenn du dich erhängst am schwarzen Apfelbaum im Namen der Mutter, der Tochter und der Heiligen Geistin. Volha Hapeyeva, vielen Dank, dass ich das lesen durfte.
Vielen Dank.
That was beautiful reading. Beautiful.
Yes, very much.
Amazing.
I'm really happy you did that.
Thank you. I hope I did it justice. Thank you, Volha Hapeyeva. Thank you, Yirgalem Mebrahtu, for being here tonight. It was very lovely talking to you, and I sincerely hope that we can do this again in real life, in presence, in the near future. Thank you to our audience for being here. You are receiving a lot of applause from other people out there.
The audience.
Yes, you cannot hear it, unfortunately, but yeah, it's been an intense evening with you guys. Thank you for that, and good evening to everybody out there.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Ciao.